Well, I'm very pleased to welcome a guest from Broadway Limited Imports, um, Curtis Koch. Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. We very pleased to have you this evening, and as a user of your product, it's great to. Though we did meet several years ago at a show, um, it's great to have you on the show this evening.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for the invite. Sorry I was running a little bit late. I've been working on some new announcement stuff that we're coming out with this Friday. So we've got a lot of fun stuff in the pipeline, and I'm happy to dive into some model railroading topics with you tonight.
Terrific. Tell us how you got into Broadway Limited. Have you been a long time model railroader?
Yeah, so my dad and I both have been model railroaders. I'm originally from the Chicago area. I grew up in the northwest suburbs of the city, and I eventually moved into the city for a job in radio broadcasting. I was actually helping with sports broadcasting in the city with a radio station there, and I worked there for about 5 years. And the job for Broadway popped up that they were looking for somebody to handle marketing and social media. And that was around the same time that I was doing social media stuff for the station that I was doing. I was helping out with the Chicago Blackhawks coverage and the Chicago White Sox coverage that we had on the station, and the Chicago Bears too. So I worked for three out of the big five teams in the city. And model railroading had always been a passion of mine. I myself am a Santa Fe modeler. I collect mainly Santa Fe stuff from what I like to call the super fleet era, if you will, from about 1989 till the pre-merger. So I have a lot of old school, or not old school, but red and silver war bonnet stuff with the big Santa Fe lettering on the side, amongst a few other items like that too. And my dad has always been a big Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy fan. So we had a couple of home layouts growing up that I always helped be a part of. And I probably would say I've been a model railroader for at least 20 years, maybe 21, 22 to be exact, around that time frame. So I've always been really passionate about the hobby. I've always been uh, one to have a creative outlet of some sorts, and I think this hobby does a great job of that. So I've always been a big fan of model railroading and the prototype itself. It helps when you grow up 30 minutes from Illinois Railway Museum and you spend a lot of time going there and seeing the vast majority of their collection that they have. And for many kids, it starts with Thomas and it grows from there. And that's the same sort of timeline that I had too. And yeah, the Chicago area really helped fuel the fire for railroading and model railroading.
That's interesting. I have a story about how I got into ON30 was because of Broadway Limited. I had been in N scale since I was a child from 1967 to 2005, and I had a inkling to get into scratch building more and more, and N scale was just too difficult. So I went on the Broadway Limited website and I ordered a couple HO locomotives, and they happened to be on back order. And I said, what? And then I looked on the site and I found these ON30 C16 locomotives. And I said, well, let me try this. And I ordered two BLI digital locomotives, and I've never looked back. So I got into ON30 accidentally, and because you were back ordered on a couple locomotives.
But it's a happy accident though, because you found your thing there.
Yeah. So tell us, um, I think we all assume that probably rightly so, that HO is, by far the largest scale and probably the largest product offering you guys have. And then you do dabble in N scale, of course. What is the approximate ratio? I mean, do you see significant
I mean,
sales?
if I had to give you a guess, and again, I don't have any solid numbers on this, but I would say out of every 10 customers, I would say 8 out of 10 are HO scale, and the other two would be N scale. N scale is a smaller market, but they are still a very vocal market. They are very passionate about wanting to get new items, and we're committed to bringing new items to N scale. But in terms of just the market ratio value, we see, like I said, 7 to 8 out of 10 in terms of HO to N scalers. And it's a very wide margin, and we that's why we have a tendency to offer a lot of stuff in HO scale first before we bring it to N scale. Because for new ideas that we have, it's good to test it out in the larger market and get that feedback before we decide to go through the effort of taking it from an HO scale model and putting it into a much smaller N scale model. Like we look at our steam locomotives, we've offered smoke now for our N scale steam, which is something that has been offered previously, but from us at Broadway, it hasn't been possible. And we heard from a lot of N scalers in a survey we did back in 2022 that a lot of N scalers would like some more features that the HO scale guys have. And so we've been trying to slowly incorporate more and more of that, but it's so tough with just the size of N scale to bring that to N scale versus HO. So for us, it's definitely something that we love to dabble in both scales, but as terms of where we primarily focus on, we mainly go to HO scale.
A lot of our viewers, I mean, I have a business background and understand how you have to cover your material costs, your labor costs, your overhead, your SG&A and make a profit. I think a lot of our viewers would be fascinated to know, what is the process at Broadway Limited when you're going to do a new product introduction? What's the process to say, okay, we're going to do a HOF unit or a GP4. I mean, what is this? I mean, you sit around in a meeting. I mean, how does it tell them, the mechanics of this and the decision-making process?
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors that go into it. First and foremost, for us, at least when we're looking at, let's say, a new steam locomotive, we have a pretty heavy market on HO scale steam. There are still some brass manufacturers that do make steam in HO scale, but in terms of other new projects like that, we're really cranking out a lot of new steam locomotives. And for us, we look at the history of what has sold well versus not sold so well. You look at a UP big boy, and customers love our big boy, and we get comments, oh, you're doing the big boy again. Well, the big boys are always very, very popular. It's arguably the most popular locomotive on the rails right now. If every project we made sold like the big boy, we would be cranking out a lot more newer niche things, to say the least. And there are a lot of niche things that we're getting to, like just most recently, the Boston and Albany Berkshires, A1A Berkshires that we announced at Amherst back in January. That's a project that, Boston and Albany compared to Union Pacific, who has the bigger fan base. Well, I'd be dumb to say if Boston and Albany had the bigger fan base. Everybody knows Union Pacific has the bigger fan base. So it comes into customer size. What's the market there for that? It comes into, okay, what sort of manufacturing things are we going to be able to save? If not, are we able to reuse anything? Like the Boston and Albany Berkshire chassis, we are able to reuse because that came from our Boston and Maine and Santa Fe and Southern Pacific T1A Berkshires that are now in stores. So reusing parts like that helps keep production costs down and allows us to make a few of those more niche models that you wouldn't really typically expect us or any of our other competitors to make. But it helps keep those costs down, and that's just one of the many factors that goes into it. There's always, what's popular. Big steam is always a big popular thing. Streamlined steam is a big popular thing. Okay, and then we look at the diesel market. Okay, there's a lot of modern diesels out there. Which ones have not been done of well or not done enough of that we can offer multiple other road names and paint schemes of. We look at the GP35, for example. Our Jeep 35s have been extremely popular, even though there's been other companies that have done it before. We've dabbled into some of the lesser known paint schemes and road names that other companies have not done. Wheeling in Lake Erie is a good example of that, where we offer that road name, and we sold hundreds of those units in this current production run that, again, hasn't been offered before. Dabble into the passenger car market. We're looking into making a lot more business cars. Our UP Kennefic business car, number 119, has been a huge seller for us. We're completely sold out. We're building about 5,000 of them total. And before that, you'd only be able to find that car as a brass model. And you'd be paying anywhere between $1,500 to $2,000 for it if you're able to find it on eBay or anything like that. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Like I said, market availability, is it something that people can get a hand of? Referencing the business cars and stuff. Well, the big boys, one of the most popular things right now. And what goes with a big boy that customers are going to like? Well, they need more of the actual passenger cars that go behind the train. I know Walters, one of our competitors, has made the dome cars and the coaches and some of the tool cars, but they haven't made the observation platforms besides brass. And not a lot of customers have the money to drop $1,500 to it. So if we can offer it and build it for a much cheaper price and at the same quality of detail, that's a win for us, and that's a win for the market, and that's a win for customers, all over the place. So there's a lot of angles that go into it. It's not just throwing a dart and picking, which model we want to do. There is some strategy behind it. And we're really thankful that our customers love the stuff that we're making and that they're constantly ordering and they're wanting more. And we've gotten a lot of great ideas from customers on our product suggestion portal. That's a part of our website. So we actually then have data from many modelers that say, hey, I want this particular diesel or I want this one. And if we have hundreds of people that are saying that, okay, then we'll take a look at that more seriously. So, like I said, it's a wide variety of factors. I could spend another hour going into it with you, but that just gives
Well,
you a glimpse.
you probably don't recall, and I'll only ask you this once, but for the narrow gauge crowd out there, particularly the ON30 crowd, um, of course, there are limitations in you know what you can offer because you have to have a market for it. And one of the things that the brass locomotive people do, as you well know, is they'll take a deposit for a locomotive when they achieve a certain number, whatever their minimum production run is, then they'll go ahead and execute the production run, in essence, taking the risk off the table. That's the only way you can. They've sold brass locomotives like this for years. I cornered you a couple years ago at a show, and I said, "Would you ever consider doing that in ON30?" And what would be the production run, and would you be willing to wait a couple years with sufficient deposits?
Um, you know what? It's a production run to be successful on a newly tooled locomotive would have to be anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000 orders
Uh,
or pieces.
let me interrupt you. What if you took one of your, we're not proud in ON30. What if you took one of your HO mechanisms and popped a shell on it?
That's another question. I don't know how much in terms of tooling and adjustments we'd have to look into. It depends on the size of the locomotive. It depends on the scale down of it because we like to do things accurately. And if we're going to make the tooling investment to scale down an already tooled locomotive of some sort, in many cases to tool a newly designed locomotive from the ground up for steam locomotives at least can be anywhere between $200,000 to $500,000, depending upon the size, the mechanisms, all that sort of stuff, the parts that are available. Because we have, we're thankful to build most of our models in die cast, but we also have to sometimes do things with a brass hybrid line where we have handcrafted brass boilers and such. But for us, especially for something niche that we consider in terms of what our customer base has in terms of narrow gauge and ON30, we would have to see some pretty sizable orders
Yeah,
for that to come in.
yeah. I just had to throw that out there so our viewers would know that
But
you're,
but trust me, if there is people out there, like I said, I've told customers before, please tell us in our product suggestion portal. If you go to our website, broadway-limited.com, you go under the club tab on the top of the website, you'll see the portal there. Just fill out what locomotive and stuff you're looking for, and if we get a lot of requests for it, then we'll definitely look into doing it. We're not opposed to anything, we really aren't, but we're a little bit afraid or hesitant to put the investment into hundreds of thousands of dollars to tool a locomotive like that accurately if we're not going to see the return from that from in terms of orders and from customers.
around, but we can leave this at rest. I had another question. When you do a new locomotive, how much engineering is done in the States? Do you do the CAD for the shells in the States, or do you leave that to your Asian? I assume everything's probably made in China, correct?
Yeah, us, just like many other manufacturers, we all have designers and stuff that are all based in China. And we use our design team in China. We have currently 8 employees that design a variety of different things. And they're always working with us. We're in constant communication with the factory. to figure out just how much changes need to be made, what costs are going to come from that. And then when we get a CAD design, which is the 3D images, not like the one behind me here, but like the actual design where you see the parts and everything like that, then we have to go in and myself and a few others, we actually examine the 3D CAD and just determine, hey, this part is a little oversized. Hey, this part here needs to be tweaked here, or et cetera, et cetera. And then that's how we check the accuracy of the models from there.
What is the typical lead time? So let's say you decide to make a, whatever, GP40. Uh, what is the from a consensus at Broadway Limited to bringing it to the market? What is the typical lead time?
On a GP40 or any sort of diesel
Any,
like that. Yeah,
any,
but if we're gonna do it accurately, and if there's multiple types, that's the main thing. If there's four different types of locomotives that we're doing with road specific details and stuff, it can take anywhere from 9 to 14 months, depending upon the project, the size of the project, etc.
oh, you
But that's typically the time frame that you're looking at.
I meant locomotives in general. So it's pretty much a year, you would say, from,
Yeah, about average about a year. Yeah.
and that's pretty much the same for, you don't make freight cars, if I recall, but you make passenger cars.
Rolling stock takes a little bit quicker than that. Rolling stock, I would say probably anywhere between 8 to 10 months on that because it's usually one type or two types and it's consistent. The only difference would be deco, would be what the paint schemes would be on it.
And you don't make anything for the European, or it's strictly North America?
Yeah, strictly North American. That's where we see a lot of our customers based out of.
Okay.
We do have a lot of European and international customers, though, I will say, and they're fantastic. And they I get sent videos constantly from customers who are in Australia or in France, who have our models that constantly are running it on their railroads, and it's cool to see. It's kind of funny to see a big boy running on an Australian layout, but
Yeah.
but it's still cool nonetheless.
Where do you see the future of model railroading? Do you see it as a growing market? Do you see
I
it as a stable market? Do you see it as
Yeah, I I see it as a growing market. I really do. Amherst was a good example of that. We had 27,000 people come through the doors at Amherst for attendance wise. And in terms of all of those people, not all 27,000, but all the people that came up to the booth in the thousands, I would say probably 60% of them were people under the age of 35. So there's a
correct?
lot of youth that's in the hobby and that are getting involved, and they might be new, they might be involved with like how my dad got me into it. There is a lot of youth in the hobby, and I don't think that they're quite as outspoken or as seen a lot, but I do think that there's a lot of youth, and I think the hobby is set up for a great future.
Where do you see, I mean, you're an HO and you're an N. Would you ever dabble in O or Z scale, or you stick to your guns, the big markets?
We haven't decided whether or not to go into O or Z. We get asked by O scalers a decent amount if we would ever try. We have made O scale water towers in the past, so we have dabbled a little bit. My boss Bob and Ken Silvestri, who many of you might have seen before with Broadway, they all come from an O scale background of working with Williams and Lionel, and so they have that background. But we haven't dabbled into the O scale market. For us, there's many different reasons, but the main thing for us is just our market size and our bread and butter is in HO and N.
Yeah.
And I would think if at some point we would break into O scale, it'd be something new for all of us because I don't think anybody in our office has really dabbled into that. Most of us are either HO or N scale guys.
Seems like Lionel, they're getting literally thousands of dollars for these locomotives, and they're like spacecraft. They have so much electron. I mean, it's very, very impressive what they're doing. And I, I would guess that might be they could probably use a competitor, would be my guess.
Well, they've got a few. Atlas is in O. They've got a few other competitors in O. But I would love to see us dabble into O scale at some point, especially with some rolling stock. I think our rolling stock could do pretty well in O scale. But that's unfortunately not my call. That's up
Uh,
to the bosses.
your distribution channels, are they basically just direct to your website, or do you have dealers? What's the bulk of your sales? Right off your own company, I would guess.
Yeah, so the bulk of our sales is we work with a dealer distributor network. So our sales, our products, like if you take a look at any steam locomotive or diesel or whatever, when it arrives to the port of Los Angeles, we distribute it from our UPS warehouse to the distributors. Distributors include Horizon, Hobby Time, Emery, Walthers, Train World, etc. We have about 7 or 8 different dealers that we work with. And when those dealers get those models, or those distributors, should say, get those models, they then ship it through to their local hobby shops, the dealers. And that's how it's all dispersed. It goes through basically a 3-step process from us to distributors to dealers. There's a few dealers that get direct. Train World is one of them. But most of them that we work with are again through that. And we like to do that because we like to support the local hobby shops, the small shops, mom and pop shops that have been the backbone of this hobby for so long and continue to be. There's a lot of great hobby shops out there. I grew up near Lombard Hobbies, so I was a big fan of always going into their store and seeing their stock. And I've always been to a few other places in the Chicagoland area. But there's a great network of dealers out there. And every time we go to a show, a new dealer comes up and says, "Hey, I just want to say I appreciate you guys working with us," and that sort of thing. So we love working with the small businesses. We believe that's a big foundation for us, and we always appreciate them.
A lot of people probably don't realize, or maybe as a secondhand thought, when you do introduce a locomotive, whether it be steam or diesel, there's also spare parts, right?
Hmm.
We
Yep.
have, at least in my old ON30, you had an exploded drawing with all these part numbers. How does that work? So once you introduce a locomotive, do you immediately start carrying all these parts as well? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so that's part of our purchase order with the factory. So when we have a new product that comes in, the factory will usually give us probably about 2 or 3 samples or models for parts from each item number. Thankfully, we don't see a lot of Paragon 4 stuff get returned, so we do have a surplus of Paragon 4 parts, but we do have some older parts that occasionally have run out. Like if you have a locomotive that's from QSI days, so back in like the early 2000s, the factory won't make us those parts anymore. And same with the electronics. So we're very thin on those parts still. But if you do have something, it's always best bet to contact our service department and give us a call and talk to Melanie. She helps facilitate that, and she'll help get any sort of products you're looking for um, into your hands, and that way you can fix your locomotive. Or if you're not comfortable doing that, I know some guys aren't comfortable doing that. They're afraid they'll break it. They can always send it into us in our service department. We got 4 guys that work their butts off, that know our models like the back of their hands, and they're always willing to help you out and make sure that they can return the model back to you as good as better than they received it, or better than you bought it from. So they do a lot of hard work on that, and they're great guys, and they work really hard on that.
Curtis, we have about 10 minutes left. What I'd like to do is, since we're a live show and the whole idea that we have a Zoom is so that our participants can actually ask you questions. So I'd
Yeah.
like to open to the Zoom guys. Would anyone care to unmute themselves and ask a question of Curtis?
Yeah,
We,
Curtis, this is Bob Geldmacher. I hope I didn't miss this in the earlier discussion, but with the new tariffs going into effect, how's that? Have you guys talked about that in the company, and how do you see that impacting the business?
Yeah, so good question. The tariffs we don't think are going to impact us that bad. So far, with it only being 10%, it really shouldn't impact us much at all, to be honest
Mhm.
with you. If it does go higher, we'll act accordingly. But as of right now, we don't have any or worries or anything like that about if a 10% tariff is going to impact us. If anything, it might raise our prices maybe less than 10%, maybe 5%, and then we would eat the other 5%. But as of right now, we don't have any plans to raise any of the prices of any projects that we announced. So as of right now, everybody's good. You don't have to worry about the prices going up on anything you have ordered.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Someone else, please.
we have actually a YouTube question. The question is if the axle gear is available for the ON30 C16.
That I don't know off the top of my head, but like I
Okay.
was telling Tom, if you guys contact our offices, broadway-limited.com. You can go on there. You can email David. The email for that is tech support, TECHSUPPORT at broadway-limited.com. You can email them and they'll be sure to help you out and make sure you get the parts that you need. Like I said, I don't manage that, so I don't know off the top of my head, but they'll be more than happy to take care of you.
I'm going to call you. No. Do we have any other questions from the
Yeah,
Zoom?
Curtis, I have a question.
What's up?
Are you looking into battery power at all?
Battery power, do you mean like in terms of replacing decoders or?
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
we have not, and the reason for that is that a lot of customers right now they really like our Paragon 4, and if they prefer to use our diesels with aftermarket decoders like ESU, Loc Sound, or TCS, they get our Stealth Series stuff. So as of right now, we don't have plans for battery powered locomotives, but it's always a possibility. If some point down the road, we're always thinking of different innovations and ways to improve our models. And if that's something we can look into, then we'll go for it.
And another question, since you've already produced a 280 ON30, what happened to the tooling for that? It would seem to me like you could bring that back with improved gearing or improve on whatever the problems were before, because there's nothing in ON30 right now. Since Bachman dropped out, the market is there.
Yeah, so the tooling for ON30 for us was previously used by Precision, and one of the part owners that owns Broadway, along with Bob Gruba, has access to that tooling. So we no longer have access to that tooling anymore. That also things included in that tooling are like the California Zephyr cars, and a few other projects of that. So we no longer have the tooling for that. So if we had to go into looking into making a ON30 280, we'd have to literally redesign it from the ground up again. And like I said, invest all the money that goes into that. I'm sure it would fix all the problems from previous runs. But it's again, it's the heavy investment into that. Like I was saying, anywhere between $250,000 to $500,000 to tool these locomotives is a lot of money for us to invest in.
Mhm.
Curtis, who owns that tooling now? Precision?
Precision, yeah, they had that tooling.
So we could tackle them, I suppose. Are there any other questions for Curtis?
How do you determine what road names you're going to be putting on your equipment?
Good question. It's a variety of things. If we're doing a Jeep 30 or a Jeep 35, any sort of diesel, we usually go with the most popular road names in the first run. Our most recent run of SD70s, for example, we got BNSF, Norfolk Southern, CSX, Union Pacific, and then we also did 3 Union Pacific heritage schemes and 2 Norfolk Southern heritage schemes, and a couple other unique BNS or UP schemes like the George Bush 4141. So basically, we just take the handful of that are the most popular and throw it into the first run, because the logistics behind that is that we would help the sales that we would get from those numbers of the most popular ones would help kind of cover the tooling costs and the deposits for that. And then when we bring in the other schemes that are also popular, the rest of the UP heritage units, the rest of the NS heritage units, other road names involved in there, that's when we see a higher profit margin for us, because the tooling costs are not involved in a rerun project like that.
Okay. And well, one more question. How do you guys determine the price of a product?
That's also a good question. It varies from the electronics that go into it. So for Paragon 4 and Stealth, the difference there is usually for steam locomotives, anywhere between $100 or $150, but most of the time it's around $100. The other price is that we have to go off of what the factory quotes us. So when we're building a new steam locomotive and they give us a quote of they'll give us this tooling price for $275,000 or whatever the price might be, we have a spreadsheet that we then enter in numbers of, okay, if we can sell X number, what's the margin and return that we could see on this? And if we think that's doable, then great. If not, then we have to change the pricing to maybe help kind of meet that where it's a profitable product for us, then I get paid and others get paid and we get a little bit of leftover to come up with new projects.
Now, I know that you must be giving a suggested retail. Am I correct? Price on
On what project?
on any of your locomotives? You have a suggested retail price you give to your distributors?
Correct. Yeah, we have an MSRP, and then we also give dealers what's called a MAP price. It's a minimum advertised price, and that's usually 20% off of that. So when you see dealers like Train World and others selling below MSRP, that's because they're following our MAP policy.
Well, you got a great product. I'll tell you that. I'm impressed.
You've got good taste, so I could tell.
Well, not an HO anymore, though.
That's all right.
Are there any other questions before we wrap this up?
Yeah. Hey, Curtis, this is Chris Corse from Conowingo Models. We had talked a couple weeks ago at Amherst. You said at the beginning that you had some teasers for us. What do you have for us?
I don't know if you saw the locomotives behind me here, but we're announcing on Friday the Norfolk Southern. We're announcing a rerun of F units, and we've actually gone through and retooled some of our moldings and stuff to get the accurate Norfolk Southern executive F units, and these have never been done accurately before. So you can see it's got the recessed headlights or ditch lights rather that will work. And we're also offering a few other schemes too. We're offering the Chicago Northwestern as one of them. They had an executive business train, and we're actually building the C&W Fox River theater car. So you got some locomotives to pull your theater car. And we're also offering these Norfolk Southern units in their current state, which is with the Aberdeen, Carolina, and Western, and the Reading and Northern. They're both in different paint schemes now. So we're offering those accurately. And you'll find the full list of all the paint schemes we're doing and everything on Friday, but this is the newest announcement that we've got coming out. And I know a lot of customers and a lot of East Coast modelers are going to be excited for it because, like I said, nobody's offered these units before accurately. And we're really, really excited with how these are going to turn out.
Okay, I think we have time.
Curtis,
One more question.
Curtis, this is Joel McCurry. How do these special runs like this sell, and what's your production quota, and how do they sell versus other units? Like if you were just offering plain F units in different schemes.
So the exclusives that we offer, so like if we're looking at a Train World exclusive, we've partnered with them before. What we usually do is the minimum number that they get is 60 units. That's usually the minimum that we see for that. And if they sell more than 60, that's great. Then we can keep building more than the 60. But they're guaranteed 60 and nothing less. That's how these exclusive runs work. But for other paint schemes and stuff like that, we have other toolings of our F units and other projects like that where we can pick paint schemes or different versions of a road name that we haven't done before and kind of tweak in there. Or if we haven't done it in a couple of years or in several runs, then we kind of bring it back into the mix. And usually they do pretty well sales wise. It's for us, it's always about offering new and innovative things into the market. And for something as unique as like I said, a Norfolk Southern F unit that's never been done before, but it lasted until 2012, I believe, 2009, 2012, something around there. It's a really popular item, and it's something that we're excited to see kind of come into fruition.
Well, thank you, Curtis. This has been really, for me, it was really great to have you on, and I'd like to invite you back.
Yeah, I would love to come back. Love to come back.
I think next time we'll open it up earlier to our Zoom viewers, participants, and it's just been fascinating. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it as well, and I really appreciate it for the invite, and I'm more than happy to come back at some point in the future. And it was great to meet you all, and have a good rest of your show.
Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you. Have a good one, guys. See
Really
ya.
appreciate it.